May 4th, 1970, was a beautiful Midwestern day that belied the violence that was about to occur. Members of the Ohio National Guard appeared on the campus of Kent State University with orders to disperse a crowd of unarmed students protesting the Vietnam War. First, the soldiers tried tear gas, but the students stood their ground. Armed with M1 rifles, a contingent of confused guardsmen opened fire on them, killing 4 and wounding 9 others in one of the most shocking acts of violence to occur on a college campus. The indiscriminate nature of the shooting intensified the shock and outrage, which extended to many who didn't even support the student protests.
Whether or not there was an order to fire remains unclear, with conflicting testimonies about whether a direct order was given. Witnesses, including some of the guardsmen, reported hearing a command that sounded like fire. Others claimed it might have been a misunderstood order like hold your fire or prepare to fire. Sergeant Matthew McManus, one of the 8 National Guardsmen later indicted and acquitted for the Kent State shootings, vividly recalled the moment the line of troops abruptly turned at the hilltop. Wearing gas masks and following each other's movement by instinct, their rifles began lowering in unison, like a domino effect. McManus saw another officer racing along the line, trying to redirect weapons skyward. Realizing shots had already begun, he shouted, "Raise your weapons and fire 1 round in the air," then dropped to the ground himself, hoping to prevent further bloodshed.
Eyewitnesses describe a chaotic scene of screaming, students collapsing in pools of blood, and others rushing to help the wounded. One of the most iconic images from the event shows 14-year-old runaway Marianne Vecchio kneeling over Jeremy Miller's body, her face contorted in a scream of anguish.
In the minutes following the shooting, the campus was a scene of pandemonium. As students tried to aid the wounded, guardsmen reformed their lines, warning that they would fire again if the crowd did not disperse. Fearful and traumatized, most of the students retreated. Reporters and photographers on the scene captured the horror, with images of blood-soaked pavements and stunned students making front-page news nationwide. The incident was broadcast almost immediately, causing an explosive national reaction. A subsequent FBI investigation claimed to have found no conclusive evidence regarding who issued the command or whether it was a tragic misunderstanding. But they certainly knew much more than they revealed to the public as the allegations of a cover-up emerged, fueled by the destruction of potential evidence, including logs and radio communications. Critics argued that the Nixon administration and Ohio officials sought to protect the guardsmen and deflect blame onto the students. Some suggest that the shooting was a panicked response rather than a coordinated attack, which seems to be a plausible scenario considering the terrible decisions that brought the situation to that point. Many of the guardsmen were around the same age as the students, so the situation must have been confusing and perhaps even terrifying. It was a horrible situation they should have never been put in. Still, the fact remains that these soldiers, whether following orders or confused, took the lives of 4 young students. News of the killings spread rapidly, sparking outrage and a wave of protests across the United States. Over 4 million students participated in strikes, temporarily closing more than 900 colleges and universities. Kent State was closed for the remainder of the semester, as were many other schools. The Kent State Massacre also deepened the generational and ideological divide in America, symbolizing the lethal consequences of governmental suppression of dissent. The incident inspired Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young to write and record a song titled "Ohio," which was released just 10 days after the tragic event. "Tin Soldiers and Nixon Coming" were finally on our own. This summer, I hear the drumming. 4 dead in Ohio, they sing in the now iconic song. If you haven't heard it, I urge you to check out that powerful protest song. In the days following the massacre, President Nixon's administration offered a lackluster response, initially blaming the students for provoking violence. In a press conference, Nixon said, When dissent turns to violence, it invites tragedy, which struck many as cold, to say nothing of the irony of calling in the National Guard and arming them with weapons of war. Soon after the incident, according to a Gallup poll, most Americans believed the protesters were primarily to blame. Over the years, that sentiment would change dramatically. An FBI investigation, known as the Scranton Commission, concluded that the shootings were unnecessary, unwarranted, and inexcusable, but failed to result in criminal charges against the guardsmen involved. The guardsmen who shot at the crowd claimed they did so in self-defense. They testified that they felt their lives were in danger. Many claimed the protesters advanced on them in a threatening way that warranted shooting, but that seems dubious. Some historians have accused the guardsmen of conspiring to shoot the students before they retreated up Blanket Hill, but the theory has never been proven.
In 1974, 8 members of the Ohio National Guard were indicted by a federal grand jury, but all charges were dismissed due to a, quote, lack of evidence that the guardsmen intended to kill. I mean, they had loaded rifles, they aimed them at students, and they fired. Someone should have been held accountable, and ultimately, no one was.
A civil lawsuit filed by the victims and their families resulted in a $675,000 settlement in 1979 and a statement from the guardsmen expressing regret but not admitting wrongdoing.
The Kent State shooting had a profound impact on American society, significantly weakening public support for the Vietnam War and amplifying distrust in government institutions. It underscored the dangers of militarizing responses to civil protests, and it remains a powerful symbol of the cost of political repression.
Over the years, Kent State University has taken steps to memorialize the tragedy, including establishing the May 4th Visitors Center and permanent markers indicating where each student fell. The event is commemorated annually, serving as a reminder of the perils of excessive force and the importance of safeguarding civil liberties. The Kent State Massacre was a watershed moment in American history, marking a turning point in public perception of the Vietnam War and the U.S. government. The deaths of 4 students brought the violence of distant battlefields to our nation's doorstep, igniting a legacy of activism and a continued demand for accountability and justice. Today, the lessons of Kent State resonate powerfully, reminding us of the fragile balance between authority and freedom in a democratic society. There's much debate about who was to blame for the Kent State shootings, but the one thing we can all agree on is that it should never happen again. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening.